Welcome back everyone for another hard-hitting investigation, Cobra Kai Season 4 Watch Party. Sony Pictures Television recently took some fan questions that the series creators took turns answering. The questions themselves are your standard fan questions, a combination of basic info to silly fandom jokes. The important thing is where they were answering. This is in their office, maybe the writer's room. Posters and other mementos are on the walls. What we're interested in are the note cards. So these note cards appear to be story beats for individual scenes in the first episode of Season 4. Now some people wonder if we can trust any of this. Could they be trying to throw us off with false information? The honest answer is no, at least not like this. If they were going to put fake information like that, it would be plainly obvious. It would be like Kreese visits Terry Silver at his flower delivery shop. Or maybe it would say, Sam invites all the other karate students to her house for a watch party. And she says, I love watch parties. It would be very obvious. That means this is all true. We can go ahead and believe everything we make out here. That said, it's almost certainly the first episode and probably early scenes at that. I don't think it's the very beginning, but these scenes may pick up shortly after the title card. I did have a late night live stream discussing these. It was a great group effort and a lot of my thinking comes from that. I'm going to approach these in this order, which I assume to be chronological. Obviously it may not be, but it's as good a guess as any. The first card is about Kenny. Now, Kenny is one of our two new characters. His character description is a bullied new kid who turns to karate to defend himself. Now, it's hard to make out much. It looks like maybe it says Kenny goes home. Decent guess. What's really important are the next few lines. He has a call with Dad. Well, this immediately tells us his father is alive, and at least in his life somewhat. Now, under that, which implies this is what's on the call, it says man of the house. That's important. It implies his father is away, perhaps for work, perhaps for something else. Kenny has to step up and be the man of the house. Now we don't know anything else about his mother or home life, so we can't take too much from that. However, it shows Kenny feels like he needs to be responsible. He needs to step up. If he gets bullied in some way, that could be doubly hard on him. Unfortunately, I can't make out too much else, but at least we got a little info on Kenny. Moving on to the next card. The top two lines don't have much we can make out. The first word does look like Robbie. I do feel like this word could be Miyagi, so perhaps he's doing some Miyagi-Do at the dojo or something. I'm unsure. I can't make out what's on the second line. I feel like the first word could be broken, breaks, or dream or anything else. The third line is interesting. It says Tory is off, fight breaks out. Now what does Tory is off mean? Is she at the dojo and like I'm off to work? Or is she at work and off her shift? It seems to be important as it's the only thing underlined in any of these cards. If this is at the dojo, maybe people are mad about what happened in the LaRusso Mance brawl. Patience is short and a fight breaks out at the dojo. Note the fight on this card could be this fight here. They're all having at it. The problem is, Tory is in this fight. You remember from my breakdown video, this is her foot, and most certainly ends up on top of Robbie. Possible, but not sure. The other possibility is it's some fight at Tory's job when she's off. Maybe she gets in a fight with a customer? More on that in a minute. The final note on this card is Kreese and what's up in quotation marks. Presumably this is in response to the fight, though it is an odd reaction to all the students fighting. Now let's move on to the third card. Luckily I think we can make out everything on this one. Top line is Daniel teaches Johnny Miyagi-Do. That in itself is huge. We know the cross-training won't just be with the kids, it'll be with the senseis. Obviously Johnny isn't going to like the Miyagi-Do training, you know, with the waxing and the painting and all that. The next lines are, reminds Johnny Miyagi was a badass and saved his life. This is obviously Daniel trying to convince Johnny to have a go at it. Now we should stop a moment here and point out they are really misusing the term badass. There's a tendency on this show and in the fandom to massively overuse the word badass. These writers and others use the word badass to mean any good or desirable trait. It's like if something is awesome or amazing but not badass, that is a letdown. So consequently, they say badass all over the place where it doesn't really fit. Badass, actual badassery, is going to have a certain feel to it, where you're deliberately creating an impression for others.
You just couldn't help yourself, could you?
What? It's badass.
I know a guy. Just hooked me up with this bad boy.
Oh, shit. That is badass.
Mr. Miyagi is literally the opposite of that. In fact, if Daniel ever tried to tell Mr. Miyagi he's badass, you know how he would respond.
You're too much TV.
Of course, the problem is the TV he's referring to is Cobra Kai itself. Still, it's true. Now you may want to know, what is Mr. Miyagi? That's a good question, but not for here. I'll talk about Miyagi one day, probably in the context of screenwriter Robert Mark Kamen. Anyway, the card ends with flashback. So basically, Daniel reminds Johnny that Mr. Miyagi saved his life and will likely get a flashback to this moment from Karate Kid 2. For what it's worth, I hope this is one of the few flashbacks we get. They really overdid it in Season 3. The fourth card is Katara or Kataka Sushi, something like that. It's Tory, something. Many think this says Tory fired. Now that would make sense for sure if up here Tory was off work and some fight broke out at the restaurant. She could be getting fired. It's a little confusing though, because if the scene for this card was at the dojo, then that wouldn't get Tory fired unless she was late for work or something. Honestly, I'm not convinced this says Tory fired. This here doesn't look like an I, and how is this the ED? If I had to guess, I would say this says Tory funk? Yes, funk? Tory is in a funk. She just lost another fight to Sam. Maybe the other students at Cobra Kai blame her. Perhaps Robbie is not happy with her. She's in a funk. Perhaps the reason nothing more is written is because the screenwriter was going to just write it however. The screenwriter, by the way, is probably John, Josh, and Hayden, as they've been writing the first episodes of the seasons. This could actually be a comedic scene as a disgruntled Tory is having to deal with stupid customers, as is the tradition of the service industry. Or maybe she's just trying to keep it together with everything that's happened. One other possibility, going back to the second card, if it's taking place at the dojo, it says Tory is off. Maybe that means Tory is off the team? It seems extreme, but it is underlined for goodness sakes. Kreese has had it with her constantly losing to that LaRusso girl. It seems unlikely because he has a bit of a bond with Tory, but then Kreese had a bond with Johnny too, and we know how that turned out. It would make sense for Kreese to throw her off the team. It would also make sense she would start a fight with everyone at the dojo out of rage or to prove she should stay on. Maybe she wins, but she's still in a funk at work. But we do know from my sneak peek video that they are reusing Tory's sushi restaurant uniform, so this is certainly the scene. Be sure to watch that video if you haven't seen it. Now the next card is a little tricky. It clearly says Amanda and Sam. This is a scene with them. Now after that is hard. In my live stream, people thought this said, clean up, Amanda upset. Then it goes, Sam says they will handle at the tournament. Presumably this implies Cobra Kai. This means Sam is telling Amanda about the bet and they will take care of Cobra Kai at the tournament. My issue is, as of now, I'm not completely convinced all that is right. The problem is, since these cards are handwritten, I can't match the letters and line them up as I did previously. I do think this word is up, but I'm not sure about the first word. Cleans up does make sense, especially since the LaRusso man's brawl left so much destruction. Maybe it says clear up, which really means the same thing. On the next line, I do think it's possible this word could be Tory and not they. I'm also uncertain about the last word. It really doesn't look like tournament. But if it is Tory, what will she handle? I don't know. Unfortunately, the rest of the card is hard to make out too. The last card doesn't have much, and it's almost impossible to make out anything. I did think the first word was Tommy, but in other videos it looks more like Johnny. What else though? I don't know. There is the possibility, if this is an AD, maybe there is another D in front of that somewhere that isn't showing up. Maybe this is Johnny and Dad? It's hard to tell. It is interesting if listening to Daniel talk about Mr. Miyagi triggers a memory of Johnny and his father. That's speculation though. Those are the main parts. The blue post-its have some words, but I'm not sure how they fit in. Since this board was set up, they could deal with anything. This one says Robbie something. This one says Find Moon something. This one appears to say LaRusso family dinner. That's interesting, but I don't know how it fits in anywhere. So are you getting a decent glimpse of what the first episode will be? It's dropping in December, and we will likely get the proper teaser trailer in September. Be sure you're subscribed to stay on top of everything. You can also sign up for my Subscribe Star for more exclusive content. Have a great day. I'll see you at the next watch party.
You're off the team. Get out! You lost to an untrained fighter. He's going to take your spot on the team.